Hey, Algebra 1, going to be making that quiz review for Unit 8 that I was telling you about. So just so you know, remember the quiz is on Monday, and this review is part of your homework, so make sure you attach this or staple it to your packet that you have, just so you don't lose it, and also that when you finally turn it in, when we eventually take the test, then it's all there together. Okay, so let's look at this first problem here. First, we need to write each polynomial in standard form, and then we have to name it. Well, off to the side, let's write the different names that we might encounter as we go through these. So first thing is going to be linear. That means that the degree of our function is 1. The next one is going to be quadratic, and the degree, or the highest exponent, is going to be 2. The next one will be cubic, and then that's when our exponent is cubed, or to the third power, the highest one. And then the last one is going to be quartic, which is raised to the fourth power. But the main ones that we're really going to focus on for these next few weeks is going to be quadratic and cubic. Okay, so but if we do see linear, if you do see an exponent, the highest exponent is 1, then it's going to be linear, and if the highest exponent is 4, it's going to be quartic. And we'll talk more about the other ones after. Okay, so for this first problem, write the polynomial in standard form and name it. Okay, so first thing we need to do is put it in standard form. Now it says 7 minus x. But remember, the numbers always go last. We're always going to start with the variables, starting with the highest exponent first. So in this case, we only have one letter, we only have one number, so we just simply put the variable in the front and then put the number or the constant behind that. Okay, the next thing we want to do is name it. In order to name it, we need to know what is the degree, or what's the highest exponent. Well, it's just x here, and there's no number here, so then there's no number, that means there's a 1. And remember, if our degree is 1, then it's linear. Okay, so the next one, number 2. First thing, put it in standard form. Well, remember, highest exponent to lowest exponent. We have a 2 here, then we have a 1. Remember, there's a 1 if there's nothing there. And then the one after that is just a number. So let's just put it in that order. So first we'll start with negative 2x squared plus 14x. And then we finish with the numbers, plus 1. And the name, well, let's see, the highest degree, or so the highest exponent is 2. And if the highest exponent is 2, then it's quadratic. So when I ask you for the name, you're going to either write linear, quadratic, or cubic, or quartic. Now the next one. The next one says we need to classify each polynomial according to its degree, number of terms, and remember, use the vocabulary, and identify the leading coefficient. Okay, so let's take a look at this problem here. Well, it's nice because it's already in standard form, and we want to make sure it is, because if it's not in standard form, then we need to put it in standard form, and then we can figure out the rest of the polynomial. So the first thing it says is the degree. The degree comes from the highest exponent. Well, let's take a look. So we have 3 here, and then we have a 1 here because we can't see the 1, and the highest one of those is the 3. So then that means our degree of our function is 3. And the T stands for terms, and remember, we need to say how many terms there are, and we have 1, 2, 3. And then you say, what type of terms do we have? Well, we have a trinomial. And again, let me list those different types. So if we just have 1, it's monomial. And then if it's 2 terms, it's binomial. And then if it's 3, it's like a triangle with 3 sides, trinomial. Okay? And if it's 4 or more, then it's just a polynomial. Polynomial. Okay, and then the last one, LC. LC stands for leading coefficient, and that is the first number. Remember, look in your notes if you're not sure which one goes to which. Okay, so the first number is 3, our leading coefficient. Okay, now the next one. Well, it looks like we just have this one number here, so we're just going to use this one number to figure out the rest. Okay, so the exponent here is 1, so that means our highest degree, or highest exponent, is 1. And we have one term. If we have one term, look over here, that means it's a monomial. And our leading coefficient, well, that's just the first number that's in order, and that's this 12 here. So it's 12. Okay, now we're going to simplify. Simplify means we're going to combine like terms, or we're going to add and subtract. Or we might also multiply. So now in this first one, we first want to put boxes and triangles or different shapes around the different terms that we have. Okay, so first I'm going to start with a box around this one, and then I go across and look which one else has a exponent with 3. Well, this one does, and we'll make sure we include the sign, whether it's negative or positive. And this 8a, well, the exponent is 1, so that's not the same. So here I'm going to do a triangle. And it doesn't matter what shape you use, you can choose whatever shape you want. And then some of you guys actually put little lines underneath too. I prefer the shapes. Now we can combine the a cubed, remember say a cubed, and we have negative 14 minus a. Remember, there's always a 1 in front of a variable or your letter if there's no number there. So now it's negative 14 minus 1. And if we have two negatives, that means we're making a bigger negative. So negative 15 a cubed. So we're done with those two, and the last thing we have is 8a. Positive 8a, so we do plus 8a. Okay, the next one, number 6. Okay, now these are important. When you have parentheses, pay attention to the sign that's in the middle. Here we have a plus. If it's a plus, it does not change anything to the right. It doesn't change anything. So if it doesn't change anything, then we can just take away the parentheses. So if we see plus in the middle, then take away the parentheses. Now remember here, we have a negative x squared, so it's going to be minus x squared, and then plus 7x minus 9. Now do the same thing, combine all the terms that are the same. Box around the 5x squared, and then I also have an x squared here, and remember include the sign. Now I have a x, negative x here. Let's see if I have any other x's. Well, I have one also here, so I'll put a circle around that. And then the last one would be these numbers here. So I'll put a triangle around the 6 and a triangle around the negative 9. Now let's combine them. Okay, so now we're going to start with, we want this to be in standard form. Standard form we need to have from the highest exponent to the lowest exponent, from left to right. Not from right to left, but from left to right. So here, 2 is my biggest exponent. So I'm going to start with x squared. So now I have 5x squared minus x squared. Well, remember, there's a 1 here. So really, it's just 5 minus 1. So we have 4x squared. So we're done with those. Cross them out. And then the next one, well, numbers always go last, and variables always come before numbers. So our next one is the x. So now we have negative x plus 7x. Also remember, there's a 1 there because we have no number in front of the x. So now it's negative 1 plus 7, which will be positive 6x. So we're done with that. Now the last one is positive 6 minus 9. Well, that's negative 3. And again, you can use the box method to figure out what the plus and minuses are for the negative numbers, or simply just use your calculator. Save yourself a little time. Okay, and there's our final answer. Okay, number 7. Now number 7, this is similar, but the difference is now we have a negative in the middle. If we have a negative, it's going to change the sign to everything to the right of it inside those parentheses. Just inside those parentheses there. So if there's a negative in front of the parentheses, then you change everything inside the parentheses. So now, just rewrite the first trinomial. Then we need to change the sign on all of these. So now this positive 3t squared becomes negative. Then this positive 2t becomes negative. And then this negative 12 becomes positive. So now when I write it, I have minus t squared minus 2 and plus 12. And again, go back to just grouping all your like terms. So box here, and I have a t squared there as well. And then here I have a negative 8t and a negative 2t. And then I have a negative 9 and a plus 12. And so now let's do the t squareds because we want the highest exponent first. Because we want a standard form. So we have 9t squared minus 3t squared. Well, that's 6t squared. And then we have negative 8t minus 2t. Remember, if I have two negatives, it just makes a bigger negative. Or let's just do the box off to the side, just to check. So if I put negative 8 here, it'll go in the negative box. And I have negative 2, so that also goes in the negative box. So now you have 8 and 2. Remember, if they're in the same box, then we add them. And we say, well, which one's bigger? Positive box or the negative box? And in this case, it's the negative box. So 10 is negative. And that's why it's negative 10t. And then the last one, negative 9 plus 12. Let's do the box again. Well, we have negative 9 and positive 12. And if we have numbers in different boxes, you find the difference or you subtract. So now we do 12 minus 9, which is 3. And the positive number is bigger, so that means that this 3 will be positive. And then that's it. Okay, so now let's go to number 8. Again, we have another negative here. And you got to be careful on this one. This one can be a bit tricky because you think, oh, look, I have it. Oops, sorry. Jumped around. I have a squared here, or I have a y to some exponent and another y to exponent. So I combine those, right? But be careful because that's y squared and that's y cubed. So pay attention to those exponents. Okay, so first thing is we have a negative or a subtraction between the two parentheses. So we need to change all the signs to the right. So let's rewrite it. 3y squared minus 7y. This doesn't change. But now everything to the right of this changes. So now this positive y cubed will be negative. Then this positive 2y squared will be negative. And also this 5 will become negative. So now I have minus y cubed, and then minus 2y squared, and then negative or minus 5. Now let's group them all together. First start with my first number, is 3y squared. This negative 2y also is squared. And then that's it for that variable. And then the next one will be negative 7y. Well, it doesn't look like I have any other just numbers with just one y. So that's it for that. And then I have numbers here, positive 4. My other number is here, a negative 5. And I still have one more. And that's this negative y cubed. So I'll just do a orange circle this time. Okay. So now, let's first start with the highest exponent. We'll look across. Which one has the highest exponent? Well, it's this 3 here. So that is going to be the first one. Might not be the most obvious because it's just a negative 1 in front, and this has a 3, but we don't go by the number in the front. We go by what is the exponent. Okay, so negative y cubed. Then we go to y squared, or y to the 2. Then it's 3y squared minus 2y squared, which is just 1y squared. But remember, we're simplifying. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. So if we don't need it, don't write it. And we don't need a 1 there. So just leave it as minus y squared. So now we're done with that. And then the next one will be net minus 7y, and there's nothing else to combine with that. And then the next one would be 4 minus 5, which would be negative 1. And then we're done. Okay, now we've got some multiplication. And remember, you need to recognize when it's multiplication, the difference between multiplication and adding and subtracting. If your parentheses have a plus between, like this, let's do it off to the side. If they are plus, I'm going to add. If I'm going to have a negative between, I'm going to subtract. If there is nothing between them, then we multiply. So remember, you need to see that difference. Plus here, add. Negative here, subtract. Nothing, just multiply. Okay, so let's focus on this problem right here. This x plus 6 and x plus 3. Well, I have, let's see, I have one term here, 2 terms, and then the next binomial, I have 1 and 2 terms. So I have 2 in the first and 2 in the second. Then that means I'm going to make a 2 by 2 box. So now I write my first binomial over here on the left. And then I write, so that was this one, x plus 6. So I write x here, 6 here. And then I write the other one, x and 3 on the top. And now all I do is I multiply across. So now, for this box, I multiply x times x. So remember, this x has an exponent of 1. This x has an exponent of 1. And if you multiply the same number, or the same x, you add the exponent. So 1 plus 1, so x squared. And then here in this box, 3 times x to the 1, well that's just 3x. And then here I have x times 6, so that's 6 times x. And then the last box is 3 times 6, which is 18. And the nice thing about the box is that anytime I have a diagonal like this, they're the same type of term, and I can add those together. And the one in the top left is our first term, and the one in the bottom right is our last term. So now I have, as my final answer, x squared, and then I add 6x and 3x, so I get 9x plus 18. And there we are. Okay, so let's go to number 10. So now number 10, I have another 2 by 2 with 2 terms here, 2 terms here. So let's make another box. And now I'm going to have 7x here, and 4, or negative 4 here, and 3x here, and 1 here. And in the first box, I'm going to do 7 times 3, and then also times x and x. And remember, this is x to the 1 and x to the 1, which is x squared. And then this box is going to be 7 times 1 times x, so just 7x. And then 3 times negative 4, which is negative 12, times x, which is negative 12x. And then the last box is just 1 times negative 4, which is negative 4. And then again, remember that these are the same terms, again the diagonal. And the first term in the top left usually goes first, but remember we just want to make sure that is the number that it has the highest exponent. That's why I'm choosing that one first, because it has the highest exponent. But what the nice thing about the boxes is that the top left always ends up being, as long as everything is in standard form, the top left ends up being our first term. So now we do negative 12x plus 7x. Well, that's negative 5x, so minus 5x. And then our last term is negative 4. And there's our result, or our solution, or our expression. Okay, now on this one, 5x minus 2 squared. Well, 5x minus 2 squared. If you see a squared, that means that you're going to have two 5x minus 2's. So again, if we have a square here, you write this out twice, 5x minus 2, 2 times. And now it's 5x minus 2 times 5x minus 2. So again, we've got two terms here, two terms here. So this is a 2 by 2 square. So I'll put 5x here and minus 2. And again, 5x and minus 2, because they're pretty much the same thing. And now we're going to multiply. So here, start with the numbers. 5 times 5, 25. And here we have x to the 1 times x to the 1. Because remember, if there's nothing there, no number there, or no exponent, that means there's just a 1. And then we add them, so 1 plus 1 is x squared. And then here, we'll have 2 times 5. And don't forget, there's a negative, so it's negative times a positive. And then we also multiply the x. And then here we have 5x times negative 2, which is the same thing, so it's also negative 10x. And then we have negative 2 times negative 2, well, that's 4. And then we have negative times a negative, well, that equals a positive. Now, we have those two terms that are the same. And we start with our highest exponent value, so that's 25x squared. And then we have negative 10x minus 10x. Well, that makes us a bigger negative. And then, so it's minus 20x plus 4. Okay? So remember this 10 and 10, they're both negative, so they both go in the negative box. I'm just reviewing how to add these two negatives together. And if they're in the same box, we add them. And their negative side is the bigger side. Oops. So that means it's that negative 20, that 20 is negative. That's why I put negative 20 here. Okay, so now number 12. Okay, so number 12, we have a 1 by 1, 2. So a 1 by 2. Oops, not 1 plus 2, a 1 by 2. Okay, so now, we just stick with black. I do a 1 by 2. Okay, so now you're going to put the 6x cubed here on the left, because that's the number that's outside. And then for the other binomial, you're going to put the 8x to the 4th on top, and then negative 3x to the 6th here. Now, again, focus on the numbers first. 6 times 8. Then we'll do the exponents. Then, let's look at the x's. Well, I have a 3 here, and a 4 here, and when we multiply, remember that we add the exponents. So now it's x to the 7th. And then here for the next one, focus on the numbers first. So I have 6, negative 3, well that's negative 18. And then for the x, I have a 3 here and a 6 here. So remember, when we multiply x's, or we add the exponents, so it's 9. So now look, which one of these are you going to write first? Because this has a 7 and this has a 9. Well, it's going to be the one with the 9, because that has the bigger exponent. So we're going to write negative 18 x to the 9th plus 48 x to the 7th. Okay? Okay, now number 13. Zoom up on that one. Okay, so now with this one, I've got 1, 2 here, and then I have 1, 2, 3 terms here. So that means I'm going to make a 2 by 3 box. Okay, so make a 2 by 3 box. And you're going to write the first terms in the first parentheses here, so x, and then negative 4. And then here, 5x squared, and negative x here, and then 8 here. And now you're going to multiply again. So remember, in front of this x I have a 1, and the exponent is 1. So don't forget that. That'll help us figure out what to put in this box. So first the numbers, 1 times 5, and then multiply the x's. And remember, we multiply the x's, we add the exponents, so 1 plus 2. And then let's go down. Now we multiply the numbers, negative 4 times 5, negative 20, and then times x squared. And then up here, well, it says 1 times negative 1, so that's just negative 1. And then we have x to the 1 times x to the 1. Well, that's x squared, 1 plus 2. And then here, we're going to have negative 4 times negative 1. Well, that makes a positive 4. And then times x. And then here, we're going to do 1 times 8. That's 8 times x is x, so 8x. And then 8 times 4, well, that's 32. And then we have a negative times a positive, so it's negative. All right. So when we get to these 2 by 3s, we do more multiplying, but the steps are still the same, just a little bit more work. Now here, we have the same terms here and same terms here. Like I said, as long as everything's in order before you multiply, you're going to end up with diagonals here, and you'll have the same terms diagonal. Now, I'm going to write this first term because 5x to the third, or 5x cubed, is the biggest exponent. And now I'm going to have to combine the x squared, so it's negative 20 minus 1, so that's minus 21 x squared. So we're done with those. Now I have 4x and 8x. Well, that's just 4 plus 8. That's 12x. Done with that. And now I have negative 32. And that's my last one. And we're done. Now this one can be a bit tricky because we've got two things going on here. First, remember, let's go back up here. If I have plus between the parentheses, I add. If I have subtract or minus, I subtract. And if I have nothing, I multiply. Well, guess what? Here, I have plus, so I'm going to add. But here, I have nothing, so I'm also going to multiply. So, if I was looking at PEMDAS, I would do parentheses first, then exponents, then multiply. What comes first? Multiply or add? Multiply comes before adding. So I multiply before I add. So that means that we need to multiply this first. Then we can add, or plus x plus 3. Okay, so let's just look at this part here. So I have 1, 2, 1, 2, so we make a 2 by 2. So now I put my first terms on the left, 2x and 5, and then my other terms on the top, 3x and negative 1, multiply 2x times 3x, so that's 6x squared, and then 3x times 5, that's 15x, and then 2x times negative 1, that's negative 2x, and then negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Okay, remember, I still have the same terms diagonally. So now, let's write this off to the side here. I'm going to have 6x squared is the first number. And then I have 15x minus 2x. Well, that's minus 13x. And then minus 5. Because we did that one, and then that one. But Remember, I have this x plus 3 here. So I need to add that as well. Because remember, it was all this that we just figured out. We multiplied it. Now we need to add it to x plus 3. Okay, so now let's just combine the like terms. So I have a x here and another negative 13x here. And then I have positive 3 here, and I can also add that to negative 5 here. And then the last one I have is this positive 6x squared. Well, remember, exponents first, highest at first, so 6x squared goes first. And then we have x, so now x, or 1x, times minus 13x, so that's minus 12x. Done with that. And the last one is 3 minus 5, which is minus 2. Okay. All right, now the last problem. Now we need to create or make a polynomial that follows these rules. So first thing is it has a degree of 4. It's a trinomial, meaning it has 3 terms. So 3 terms. Degree, again, degree of 4 means the highest exponent is 4. And then here, the leading coefficient is 8. So that means the first number is going to be 8. Okay, so using these clues, well, I know my first number is going to be 8. So let's just write 8. Okay, so we're done with that clue. And let's see, I need 3 terms, so that means I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 terms. And the first has to have I have to have a degree of 4. So that means my highest exponent is 4. But remember, with standard form, the highest exponent is written first. And if the leading coefficient is 8, that goes on the first number. So that means this first number will be x to the 4th. And I need 3 numbers. Well, let's just go down in order. So if I need 3, I start with x to the 4th, and then I go down to x to the 3rd, and then I go down to x to the 2nd. And then all you have to do is just pick a number. Minus 2, and then I don't know, I'll choose plus 4. So these last numbers here, you can choose whatever number you want. What's important is that you have a coefficient of 8, that you also have a degree of 4, and that you also have a trinomial, 3 terms, so I have 1, 2, and 3. Okay? I hope this review helped you. If you have more questions, contact me on Remind. And if you don't have a phone and can't text me or send a message through the app, well then just log onto your computer and go to, let me see if I can get that in the picture. Oops. And go to remind.com. And if you type in remind.com right here, then it'll take you to this site, and then you can just click on the classroom that you're in. So you'll say, okay, well, I'm in 5th period. And then you'll be able to just click on chat, and then you'll be able to have a conversation with me and ask me a question. Okay? That's it.